Domestic Estate Manager Studios in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. It's the nation's #1 podcast series in the private service industry. It's time for DEMA Live. Now, here are your hosts, Matt and Mike. Hello and welcome back to another edition of DEMA Live. I'm Matthew Hack, and today I'm joined by Ty Brown. Ty is the founder of CommuniCanine and is DEMA's local doggy behavioral specialist. With over a decade of dog training, Ty has become an expert, whether training a puppy or correcting behavioral issues with older dogs. Ty, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be on.
We're excited to have you as a member of the association, and I think that this is going to be a fantastic opportunity to be able to introduce your company and some of the things that you do in regards to training dogs and helping out some of the private service professionals that might be having situations with either a new puppy that they have within the home or an older dog that might be having some situations that you can help make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
The first thing I want to talk about with you is what made you want to be a member of the association? How did you find DEMA, and why do you feel that DEMA is a perfect location and opportunity for your company?
Good question. The funny thing, the awesome thing about dogs is that they kind of transcend everything. And so over the years, I've trained dogs for billionaires, and I've trained dogs for people that are on welfare, literally. And so dogs are so cool because everyone, so many people love them, and they're just really neat. And so our company has really evolved to where we take on some of the bigger stuff that other people don't. We train really high-end security dogs. We train diabetic alert dogs. We train service dogs. We get rid of some of the big aggression problems. And we started seeing that, people were sending us their dogs from around the country, and more often than not, we were dealing with estate managers. And so, in fact, not too long ago, I was talking with someone, and she's like, and I said, "Oh, you're the estate manager," and she said, "How do you even know what an estate manager is?" So few people do, and we've dealt with so many estate managers over the years that we started saying, maybe we should reach out to these guys, because I know the challenge that you estate managers have. You've got all your duties, you've got your job, and then the owner of the house, your boss, says, "Hey, here's a dog," and we don't have a lot of time, so you're going to have to do a lot of the raising and the training of the dog. And so it often lands on the estate manager's shoulders to really take care of the logistics of the vets, of the training, of all that stuff. And so, our goal was to really provide a lot of value to estate managers and help you guys with your job of taking care of the dog, just one little piece of your job.
Super. I think one of the things that we ran into early on as an association is we had an estate manager, and they called us up and they said they had been out with their principal who had been hunting, and the principal had he had a fascination with hunting. However, he didn't have a hunting dog. And that was one of the responsibilities that he turned to the estate manager while they were out hunting. And he said, "Listen, when we get back to the estate, I want you to start doing research on certain dogs and what are the best dogs for the particular style of hunting that they were going to be involved in." And that was where we realized that we needed to really encompass all aspects from an estate manager perspective regarding having the proper resources, and I think that that's why you're going to be such a valuable member of the association.
Well, awesome. Yeah, like I say, they transcend everything, so everyone wants dogs. Not everyone, but a big portion of the population wants dogs, and that goes for these principles as well.
Sure, absolutely. Now, a lot of our members work for principals that are traveling quite a bit. And one of the things that I'm interested in hearing kind of a quick response for is what's the best way that a estate manager can ensure that the dogs that are maybe left behind at the estates that they're managing or running, how can they make sure that those dogs are getting the proper attention and training and enough support to feel loved?
I think what estate managers really need to think in their minds is they need to think one word: leverage. Meaning, what is the smallest amount of work I can put in that's going to get me the greatest results? Now, of course, if they have plenty of time to work with a dog, that's great. If they love the dog, that's great. But not all of the estate managers that we work with even like dogs to begin with, yet it becomes part of their responsibility. And so, like I say, what we're big on is leveraging time, leveraging resources, et cetera. So One thing that we teach a lot of is something we call integration training. Meaning, an estate manager, a busy owner, et cetera, doesn't have the time to put in 2 or 3 hours a day of training. But think about the tasks that you're already doing. You're already sitting at the desk, working on some reports or whatnot that your principal has you working on. Or perhaps you're tidying up a room. Or perhaps you're sitting watching the kids. I mean, there could be a variety of things that I know that, estate managers might be doing. Try to think how you can integrate training into that. So, for example, when we first start training, we'll leave a leash on the dog at all times in the house. The dog shouldn't be wandering the house when it's young or, when it's not trained, and so we leave a leash on the dog. And then, like I say, perhaps you're behind the computer working on some reports. Well, that's a great time to integrate your training and work on the dog doing a place command. Just put a bed right there, have the dog lie on the bed. Every time he gets off the bed, you grab the leash, just a little correction back to the bed. And it makes your job a little bit harder at first, but soon the dog gets the point, and now you're working on reports, and the dog is just lying in the bed. Same thing, if the dog is on a leash, you're walking through doors, take 5 seconds and have the dog wait at the door. What happens is this kind of builds up throughout the day, and the dog gets a lot of training, even though it didn't take a whole lot of your time because you're integrating it. And so as a result, the dogs tend to be much more satisfied and tired when they're getting this training throughout the day, and it didn't take a lot of your time.
Okay.
Another thing that we'll often recommend is focused walks, and it's on the same thing. But you'll want to teach the dog to walk properly by your side. You don't want the dog pulling and just yanking on the leash. The dog's getting some physical energy expended, but not a lot of mental energy expended. So focused walks tend to tire a dog out much faster than anything else, even playing fetch in the backyard. So 20, 30 minutes where the dog's right next to your side is huge. And then, of course, just toys. You want the dog to have, for lack of a better word, we call them interesting toys. Things that keep your dog's attention, like a Kong toy filled with frozen peanut butter or bones that the dog's really going to work on for a while. All of these things, don't take a ton of your time, but they can take a lot out of a dog, and so it can make your job a little bit easier.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, obviously, we're heading into the holiday season here, and we're going to have probably some puppies that are introduced to the home. Do you have any tips that you can give to either the estate manager or the principal homeowners regarding integration of the puppy into the new environment?
We do get a lot of calls come January of, oh my gosh, we got a puppy. What the heck are we going to do? And so, a lot of people want to give that puppy, in the Christmas stocking on Christmas morning. So, a lot of estate managers are going to need a plan for how to raise that puppy. If you're familiar with puppies, those listening to this, you know that they take an enormous amount of time. They take an enormous amount of effort for the first 2, 4, 6, months, and even a little bit longer than that. They take a good amount of time. And so there's a few things, now that I'm thinking about the question, there's a few things that you could really do to make your job a little bit easier. Number one is confinement. Confinement sounds like a 4-letter word. It sounds like this awful thing, because we think about being confined and we don't like it. I don't like it. Most people don't. Right. Our dogs, however, are different. They've got kind of this den instinct, if you know what I'm talking about, where they want to be somewhere, kind of comfortable and in a spot. And so one thing that's great is a crate that you can keep off in the laundry room or somewhere in the kitchen or, somewhere where you've got access to it throughout the day. A lot of our clients as well, a lot of our estate managers will really push to get like an outside kennel run because these puppies really need to be somewhere where they can't do anything wrong. Because if you leave him loose in the living room, he's going to do some stuff wrong. But, as a management tool while they're young, sometimes we'll just set up a kennel run on some cement outside and, in a place that is out of the sun, a place where a dog can be warm or cool depending on the season or whatnot. But having a space for that dog where that dog can be confined when nobody can watch him is important. That's a huge mistake I see is when these estate managers or principals just let the dog go because they're busy and then the dog starts peeing and pooping all over the floor and chewing stuff up. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and it's the way I kind of assimilate what you're saying is it's similar to an infant, right? You don't want to give free reins to a huge environment. You want them to get adjusted to a smaller environment that fits their spatial capacity at that point, so that they can kind of learn how to maneuver around that area and what the expectations are, and then slowly introduce them to the rest of their surroundings.
That's a really good example. I've got 4 little kids myself, and 2 of them are 2 and 1 years old.
Right.
And so that's a great example. We don't just leave them unsupervised. They're on the same floor as us. There's a baby gate so they can't climb the stairs, and so, or they're in their beds. So we're looking at them, or they're in our general area, or nothing. That's just how it is. Now, I always joke with people that the good thing about puppies is, you have to do this for several months, whereas with kids you got to do it for like 18 years. But it's easier with the puppy long term. But yeah, you've got to have this confinement. You've got to have this supervision, and kind of building on that. We even have most of our clients keep their dogs on a leash, their puppies on a leash in the very beginning. And it feels weird to a lot of people at first to actually have a leash on indoors, but it pays so many dividends. It's like this few-month investment to give you 10 years of dividends that it's one of the best things that you can do, because when the puppy's on a leash, he's not sneaking off and chewing. He's not sneaking off and peeing. He's on a leash, so every time he nips, you can give him a little tug on the leash. Every time he jumps, you can give him a little tug on the leash. So, again, it's about leveraging your time so that in a few months you can accomplish what it takes most people a year or 2 to do simply by keeping that puppy on a leash.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what's your recommendation then as far as the whole potty training situation? How often do you recommend that the puppy is taken outside to be able to start, introducing the right habits for potty training?
A lot of our estate managers have principals who want to get these tiny little dogs, and that's fine. I'm talking Yorkies and Chihuahuas, and they want to train them on puppy pads. I would definitely recommend against puppy pads. They tend to cause more problems than they're worth. And so to kind of answer your question, Matt, on how often to take them out, there's certain times you absolutely should take them out. First thing in the morning, last thing at night, after eating, usually about an hour after eating, after a long drink, and after any playtime. So you're playing with the puppy indoors and the puppy's moving around, you should probably take the dog out to the bathroom after that. So those are the absolute givens, that you really should be taking the dog out. And when you do that, that's many, many times throughout the day. And so if there happens to be stretches other than that, of 2-3 hours, generally with a young puppy, I'm not going much more than an hour, hour and a half before taking them out.
Okay.
What I want to do is I want to extend that as long as I can. As soon as a puppy's showing me that he can, I'll make it a little bit longer and a little bit longer. Again, we want to get this to the point where it's the least amount of maintenance possible as soon as possible. As soon as you can get to 3 or 4 hours, you're great. 4 or 5 hours, you're great. That way, you get to that goal a little bit quicker.
Okay. All right. And now some of the things that I've seen in the past that really that kind of irritate me are, as obviously as a puppy, we give a lot of praise and we have a much higher tolerance for mistakes, but as they start to mature and they move into, over that 1 year old age, you start seeing some different training products that are used. What are some of the things that you would recommend to avoid using as the puppy matures into an older dog and they start doing other things that we don't necessarily want them to be doing?
That brings up a really good topic, and it's somewhat controversial in the industry because there's kind of been this movement in the past 10 years that, dogs are these porcelain creatures, and if you look at them sideways, they're going to break, and so you got to be very careful. I love dogs. I love my dogs almost as much as my kids. I think they're wonderful, but, they're strong creatures, and so this notion that we can only train them with treats is wrong. And in fact, that's where we get so many clients, is because, these estate managers or these principals have been using just treat-based and clicker-based training, and they find that they don't really get too far. They learn the behavior fairly quickly, but who cares if your dog sits when you got a treat? You want your dog to sit when guests come to the door. Who cares if your dog comes because you have a treat? You want your dog to come because he's running out in the middle of the street, and he must come. And so treats and clickers only kind of get you so far. So what we advocate is what we call a stabilized approach, where we use a ton of positive reinforcement. We just generally use a lot of praise, like physical praise, verbal praise. So we don't need any treats or anything like that. And then we use proper correction. That might be training collars and things like that. So yeah, like I say, we find that with a stabilized approach, we can get a dog who's happily obedient, but also obedient, when it counts, which you're just not going to get that with treats and clickers.
Okay. All right. Outstanding. And then the last thing that I'd like to address is what are some of the, obviously you've been dealing with the state managers. What are some of the big mistakes that you've seen in your years of doing this that estate managers are making with the family dog?
I've alluded to some of it already, but one of the biggest mistakes I see is they give too much freedom too quickly. And I'm always preaching that. Too much freedom too quickly is a bad thing. Freedom is a thing that, with our dogs, is earned. They earn freedom by learning what the house rules are. And the fact of the matter is, most puppies that I meet, given the opportunity, they're going to chew, they're going to pee, they're going to poop, they're going to jump. And it might not even be a puppy, it might be an older dog. Might be an older dog with aggression. We deal with a ton of people send us their dogs because their dogs are highly aggressive. But what happens is the dog hasn't learned the rules and yet has freedom to choose. Hey, no one's around, I'm going to pee on the floor. No one said it was wrong because no one was here. It must be right. And so in giving too much freedom too quickly, we start to see that bad behaviors, are ingrained from, starting day one. And along those same lines, another big mistake that I see is they don't back up their commands. So many estate managers or owners, they're telling the dog, sit, calm down, stay, whatever. They're telling the dog these things all day long, but they're not backing it up. And so the dog chooses whether or not to do it, and as a result, they get very spotty obedience. And so, again, that goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about keeping, a leash on the dog so that when you give a command, you can actually back it up, so that you can make sure that the dog complies. And soon you find, one thing I always say is, the more consistent you are in backing up your commands, the sooner you don't have to be consistent. And I would say the last mistake I see people make, and this is particular to estate managers and principals, is that they don't choose a point person. Like I say, I know the situation a lot of people have to where the estate, the principal wants the dog, they get the dog, but they're busy, they're working, they're what have you. The estate manager, kind of takes care of the dog, but at the end of the day, no one's really in charge of making sure that the dog is getting his shots, making sure the dog's getting his training, making sure the dog is supervised. And so the point person doesn't always have to be the estate manager. Sometimes you can enlist the help of the children. Sometimes you can enlist the help of, maybe a landscape person, just depending on the situation. I've seen it go a variety of different ways. But there needs to be somebody at the end of the day who's accountable, who's pushing towards the goals, getting the dog properly trained, healthy, fed, cleaned, all that good stuff. There's got to be a point person.
So obviously you guys are based out of Utah, and I know that you guys do certain training for estate managers, principals, anyone that's in the process of either acquiring a new family member, or maybe they have a current family member that they're having struggles and difficulties with. How can our members get in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And you're right. On the very high end, we've got people that come to us for high-end security dogs and personal and executive protection dogs. We've got people that want, the high-end service dogs. We've got people that will bring us out. A lot of estate managers have flown me out to work with them, for a solid week intensive and things like that. Or a lot of people send their dogs to us in order to get trained. But you can check us out. You can call us at 801-895-2731. That's 801-895-2731. Or you can check us out at CommuniCanine.net, which is CommuniCanine.net. And, check us out those ways, and we're always happy to serve.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I know that it would be wise for any of our members to go check out your website. You've got a ton of educational information on there, whether it be videos or podcasts. So just appreciate you taking the time today to be able to share some of the tips in managing the new family member, or in some cases the old family member, and look forward to definitely doing this again. And thank you very much for taking the time today.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been fun.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much.